Daniel, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm having a great time. How are
Okay,
you?
so I'm very well, Daniel. So, for the audience, I'll quickly introduce you, and then maybe you can introduce yourself in a detailed way.
Mhm.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Daniel is the founder and CEO of MeltPrep. He is a scientist and he is also now entrepreneur. And he did his PhD from Graz University in Austria. If you can elaborate more about yourself, Daniel, it would be very nice.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. All my training was basically in engineering. When I went to school, I had always liked this engineering and science major. And as you mentioned already, I founded a company MeltPrep. This was during my PhD. Up to this point, I had zero experience with running a business. I
Mhm.
was trained as a scientist, as an engineer, building things, enjoying building things. And then when I had this idea in 2014, I got fascinated by, wow, there's so many problems. This moment changed my life. I need to make something out of this idea. And then we started with a journey of writing up a patent application, doing some publications on it, and try to bring this idea to the market.
So, Daniel, you started your journey as a PhD researcher first, and then you ended up founding a company.
I
Yeah.
need to correct you on this one. I was brave or crazy enough to do both at the same time. So it was
Ah,
doing a PhD, and in the middle of the PhD, I decided, oh, a PhD is not enough. I want to do a company at the same time. Of course, it delayed my PhD because when I made this step, I was already in like more than 3 years in my PhD, where most people think of finishing up and going to a company afterwards.
yes.
In my case, it was like, oh, I want to set up a company, and then
But so,
the
can you take back us
the
to the moment exactly when you decided, I should start this. This is something.
yeah, yeah. So there is not one exact moment there. It has been a story up to this point. I was very fortunate to work at a large research institute at the university where we had like 100 people working on pharmaceutical topics, and I had a great mentor or great mentors that helped me through this process on how to
Mhm.
set up a company. And before we came to this point, it was like, let's see if someone is interested in buying your patent. Uh,
Mhm.
and we approached some companies and had some conversations, but in the end, everybody was like, oh, this is a small thing. And I was not very good in telling a convincing story at the time either, because it was just an idea that needed to be developed.
Yeah.
And it was not clear to me where the journey will go, but it was also not clear to anyone else where this journey might go. And now looking from 2025 back, I think I was also very fortunate and lucky at the same time that I came in the situation to work on this idea.
Mhm.
Because you probably know very well that the success rate for a startup is pretty low.
Yeah.
Only, let's say, 1/3 or something like this would really survive the 5-year mark. So I'm very
Yes.
happy that we survived and are now on the market for more than 10 years, seen as an established company that provides innovative technologies
Mhm.
for the field of hot melt extrusion.
Okay.
And maybe also one interesting side fact that not everybody or rarely anyone knows about me is
Mhm.
that this was a byproduct of my PhD. I was initially working on hot melt extrusion, and I'm a chemical engineer.
Mhm.
So I had this task to make micro pellets after hot melt extrusion, basically to design a cutter. And as one part of this journey, I had to come up with something to measure material properties to solve all my calculation challenges, because I needed nice viscosity values that I can rely on for my calculation and so forth. And I was really frustrated by all this development or by all these material characterization steps, because I needed a lot of material the material was very valuable, so I did not have enough material to make all these characterizations and have viscosity for my calculations and so forth. And then this light bulb moment occurred in 2014. I had this idea. I would just take a sheet of Teflon, basically something like this, and roll it up and then look through the center. And then I realized, oh, this is pretty cool. I can build a sample chamber to mold polymeric materials under heat and pressure and in vacuum in this very simple geometry, and have something that will give me a great result because it will be adaptable in height. So once I had this light bulb moment, everything changed for me. And as I outlined earlier, it went into a patent application and then into this journey of trying to sell the IP to other companies. But we did not get the excitement that we probably get today when we go to pharma companies and tell the story as it developed over the years. Because back in the days, there was no story. There was only this idea, oh, this might be cool. But you know how it is. There are a lot of question marks. And over this journey now for more than 10 years, we cleared off a lot of question marks as we figured out that our technology that we promote with vacuum compression molding is actually something that gives comparable results to the production processes which are established in the industry, like hot melt extrusion, spray drying, or the kinetisol technology for the amorphous solid dispersion preparation. Since we have those publications out, which are the most important marketing tools for us, we get more and more traction because the question marks disappear, and we have proof in the literature. People with reputations have published articles where they compared all those production methods with our VCM and found, oh, this is an incredible helpful screening tool.
Yeah, I had this question in my mind that how did this experiment begin? Or I also thought that it must be a part of your thesis. So out of curiosity, then what was your thesis about?
Yeah, making micropellets. So going through an extruder, and then you usually get this polymer strand out, which is then cooled down and then chopped out into smaller pieces. And I was working on this idea to cut the polymer in a molten state, so that the polymer comes out of the die plate. You have your little spaghettis coming out, and we pressed at the same time a rotating knife on the die plate, and it rotates and cuts the liquid polymer, the molten polymer, into small pieces. And I had to deal with a lot of problems, as you can imagine, because hot polymer is sticky and so forth. And I had to understand the material science behind that, which led to, in my personal opinion, the best paper that I created, but no one is paying attention in literature. I understood why polymers stick to warm metal surfaces and proposed a very nice theory for that.
Just to understand then, Daniel, you had this idea and then you started working on yourself within the university?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So Austria is a very good environment for an academic. I guess not all of the international audience here have experience with the Austrian education system. Education in Austria basically is, first of all, free. So if you're in time, you get education for free, very good education, as I certainly can compare now because I have been traveling quite a bit over the last 10 years. And the education standard in Austria is amongst the best countries in the world. And also when it comes to startups, there is not as good support as in the US, where you tell a story and then get millions of funding in. But we get very good support by having incubators at the universities that help us during the early steps and develop ideas. And I was very fortunate to be in a good incubator as well at the university that helped me to work together with the mentors that I had from the RCP, the research institution where I did my PhD, to shape the foundation of the company. But those were the early steps. And all the developments and how we are shaped today is basically done with an incredible team that I'm working with. So our team is very powerful in solving the challenges that I bring home from my journeys. But the part that I really enjoy is basically going to some of our client sites, having their interactions with the brilliant minds out there working on new ideas.
Yeah.
Being at the frontier of science in our field is something that I really enjoy.
Yeah. And you are doing it very well. So Daniel, for someone who is very unfamiliar with your work or probably who won't understand the complexity of it, how will you explain a VCM to that person?
This is actually one of our biggest successes in marketing, that we have a little prop developed. This is something that gives us usually 2 minutes of someone's attention, because we have a little nutshell created, a real nutshell 3D printer, and then we open our conversation. We say, let me explain it in a nutshell. So I open something up and have a lot of tiny prototypes, formulation prototypes in that nutshell. And each of these formulation prototypes comes with a story. And what I basically need to explain is we take powders with API, with active pharmaceutical ingredient and the carrier, and run it through our machine and get those little prototypes out that I just presented in a nutshell. And then people understand, oh, this sounds easy, Daniel. What is unique about it? And the unique part is that it is a completely lossless process. Because if you look at all the other machines out there, they're very good for manufacturing when you need things at scale, when you need kilograms, tons of material manufacturing. But if you need small scale, there was not a good solution out there. And that's exactly the niche where we positioned ourselves, because we have a very cool technique that allows us to do things with milligram. And before I was in that field, I usually compared things to gold when I was talking about expensive stuff. But I had to learn gold is very cheap. Because you wouldn't believe so, but gold is very cheap when you're in the pharma world. Because at the moment, what is gold? $80 a gram or something like that, or $100 a gram. But if you look at new chemical entities, NCEs, they are very expensive. You better compare them to high quality diamonds.
Exactly.
Because then you go up in this range. What is a carat? 200 milligram. You go up in the range of several thousand per gram or several 10,000 per gram. But compared to our NCEs, the diamonds are also a commodity. Because if I want to buy a diamond, I walk out in the city and within a few minutes I can buy a diamond. If you work on this new chemical entity, you probably need to find a chemist that can synthesize your material, and it will take weeks to get the setting up, to get the chemical source, to get everything done. And then you have only this precious amount of, let's say, 1 or 2 grams of this new substance. You better don't lose it, because it was a long story to get to this point that this material is even available for investigation. And that's exactly where we come into place, because we allow now the researcher to do things with a few milligrams. Because when I started off, I had like this 20 millimeter or 25 millimeter disc available, which still needed a few grams of material. But when I talked to researchers, they said, oh, please make it smaller. We need it smaller. We need it much smaller. And eventually, in the first years, we had it down to 2 millimeter in diameter, which brought us in this milligram range. But after my first travels to Japan, I came back with this homework. We need 0.3 millimeter in diameter, which is very tiny. And then you're suddenly crossing into this microgram range for development purposes. But this is almost like a grain of sand or less than that, fine sand. I remember when I made my first sample myself with 0.3 millimeter, I was very proud of this moment when I got it out, and I was like, oh, I need to take a photo. I was just like going around, took up my camera, and then, damn, I lost it. I was breathing too heavily. It fell off the bench. So yeah, that's how it is when you operate in the small scale
Yeah.
standard.
But this is very interesting idea, and you showed me this nutcase when I visited your office. Whose idea is it, by the way?
So this was something that I annoyed my colleagues for years,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
I think that was like 2 years at least that I asked, we need a better way to present our
Yeah,
technology.
yeah,
And at one point, my colleague Andreas, he's with the company for 5 years now, he said, in a nutshell, and it was on a video call. And
uh-huh.
then everyone was like, ping, ping, ping on the video call, having this idea. We need to build a damn nutshell and put our
Uh,
samples in.
Very, very interesting. Because
Yeah,
that, as you said, that probably people won't forget it. Once they
yeah,
see that nutshell, they will never forget it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
it
very
also
interesting.
opens up a lot of stories, because
Mm, yeah,
people will remember me, the guy that is nuts. And then I need to tell them, hey, I'm more than nuts, so that also the science come back, because very often if they're not in the field, they only remember this little prop that I carry.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
think
yeah.
the science that we deliver has even more value than the good story from the interaction that we had.
So true, Daniel. So true. So the next thing I wanted to ask you was like every startup journey has some painful pivots or unexpected challenges. So was there ever a point where you thought, oh my God, melt prep probably it won't work out? So was there such phase?
It was like, I think in the first years when were the toughest, because I think it took me almost from the idea to the first sale almost 2 years. And this was
Wow.
probably the toughest period, because you build something and no one is putting money in there, and other
Yes.
people are telling you, oh, this is too small, this will never work, there is not enough money coming in. It was not an easy journey, but I was fully committed because I put all my money in there. So I was really fighting to make this one work, and I'm very fortunate that this worked out. But every now and then there are situations where I think, oh, it would have been so much easier if I only look at my bank account. I would have been so much better off by going to a large pharma company and getting this
Mm,
big
yeah.
paycheck every month or every 2 weeks. And but I think the amount of fun that I have is
Mm,
something
mm.
that pays off very well. I go to a conference more than every month, so I travel quite a bit. I'm seeing a lot of very talented people. I think the reward is much higher than the pain that I had to go through.
Wow,
So
that's
this
nice.
is,
Yeah.
it was definitely worth it. Yes, of course, every startup journey has this painful
Yeah.
stories when you have, all these things happening. I relocated in the middle of the pandemic to actually have the company survive,
Ah,
because
okay.
this was something unexpected. We were all hit by unexpected news with
Yeah.
COVID,
Forward.
but
Yeah.
at the time, most of our money came from the US. And you
Mhm.
probably remember that there was no international travel possible at the time. And it was very difficult to convince people that this is something that solves their problem. And at one point, I had this dinner conversation with my girlfriend at the time. We just recently married. But back then, we had this dinner conversation. It will make sense to advance our careers in the US.
Mhm.
And before the first vaccination came along, I think it was, yeah,
20. Yeah.
end of
Yeah.
2021. It was two, three, no, end of 2020. So for January of 2021, we were already living in the US and had then this journey of setting up the MeltPrep Inc. subsidiary in the
Hmm.
US. And I was free to travel again. It was a cultural shock, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
in Europe, we were in a constant lockdown because people like to follow rules, and we had a lot of guidelines. And in the US, things were a little more relaxed. As long as you had a current COVID test that you not infected, you were free to travel most of the times. And I used it quite a bit to visit client sites, to go to prospects and push the sales, which was necessary for the company to survive at this point.
Okay.
And it was also very good for our careers because we were living in the US.
Yeah.
My wife started out as a postdoc researcher and then became even the director of Supercomputing Institute within this short amount of time, the 4 years that she was working there. And now we are back in Austria, have this good memory in our backpacks and also the experience that will help us for our future adventures.
Amazing, amazing. Daniel, by any chance, any generic company shows interest in MeltPrep?
Yes, we have a lot of generic companies also as clients.
But where do they use this instrument?
For generics usually do the reformulation, just seeing if they can make the same formulation via hot melt extrusion, transfer it over from spray drying, a lot of different approaches, figuring out stability to generate data on an early project, very similar. Of course, the material costs are not as high, but you probably know how much joy there is in cleaning and extrusion equipment.
Oh, yeah.
If you just take into consideration the working time that you would lose in cleaning an extruder by all the time that you gain by just running it quickly via vacuum compression molding, where you get multiple formulations out an hour. Because cleaning an extruder is not a job for an hour or two. If you need to do that with solvents carefully, it will take you half a day to get this thing cleaned up and running again. And we can do a large amount of formulations with our equipment, which is very, very helpful because you just move quicker in the formulation development.
Yeah. But right now, MeltPrep is a funded company. You have been funded by someone.
I'm still the sole owner of the company, and we grew the company out of revenue.
Wow.
And what is part of my philosophy is the money that we earn is spent in product development. That's why our portfolio is slowly but steadily growing, bringing more and more stuff to the market. And this is the part that I really enjoy, looking at the gaps in the industry. What is missing in the lab or in the development journey of ASD and also some other fields, because we look mainly into pharma, but we also are active in other industries, which is very interesting as I have to go to many, many different conferences on polymer research, on amorphous materials outside of pharma. There are a lot actually. And this is cool because I see different science and probably can also take things along into the other fields, which is very good.
Oh, that's interesting. But as of now, pharma is still biggest for you.
Yes, definitely. But I think this comes out of an historic reason for us, because I had this pharma network gained during my PhD through the first conferences. And I was also very fortunate during the PhD time that I had to go to, I think it was like 5 or 6 conferences a year and events. So I was traveling quite a bit for a PhD student already at the time. So this gave me this strong network, and we started everything in that network. I think if I would have started in the polymer network, the polymer industry would be stronger for us.
Yeah.
That we start to understand more and more how we can provide value also in polymer research. And one of the latest developments that we have done is a thermal analysis instrument, which we call the slider. And this is a hot plate, which is cold on one side and hot on the other side. And it has this linear gradient in between. And the beauty of our solution is that it's incredible visual. So we can take now one of the samples, let's say ASD or API or a polymer out of the polymer industry, put it on a glass slide, move it along and see the change with our eyes to the material, because we change the temperature by sliding it from the cold side just slowly further to the warm hot side, and then see all phase transitions like melting points, degradation, just with our eyes. So we use the instruments that nature provided to us. And this is something that is incredibly helpful, because everybody is doing thermal analysis, getting all these nice curves out, but no one is actually looking at the sample. But you can learn so much by looking at the sample. You see where crystallization happens, where the melting happens, because it becomes suddenly glassy, transparent, not opaque anymore. You can see color changes for degradation. And this is something that attracts a lot of attention in both fields. So this is something where the polymer researchers say, wow, this is incredible. I want to have this as a teaching tool. It's super cool to have it in the introduction to thermal analysis. And likewise in pharma. So people are like, oh, this is very helpful. I can quench cool my APIs much quicker, figure out if it's a fast crystallizer or slow crystallizer, and so forth.
Wow, that's so interesting. Very interesting. And as of now, then US is the bigger market for you, or Europe is?
Yeah, US is obviously, as the strongest pharma market, a very interesting market for us. And we get a significant share of revenue from the US, but also other regions are picking up. So I'm very impressed to see how things are developing. We have good sales also in Asia and in India as well, which is very good for us.
Nice. Let's come back to you, Daniel. So, who inspires you? Or who are the people who inspires you?
Yeah. So engineers, of course, and people that come up with good solutions. So when you ask my wife how we spent our last vacations, she would answer with, "Oh, we went to a lot of museums." And when we were living in the US, I was living in the US for 3 years. We went to Edison Museum, to Alexander Graham Bell Museum, to Henry Ford Museum, which is an awesome place to visit. But those are guys that were brave enough to shape the world. And I think that's where I get a lot of inspiration, by looking a little bit to the past, but I actually want to shape the future myself. So getting some inspiration and apply those things then to the solutions that we provide to current problems. Because very often you can translate things from the past also to the current problems, and figure out how we can contribute in a meaningful way.
Yes, this is so true, Daniel, because I remember when we had a vacation and we, along with my family, I went to Singapore. When we visited the museum, then only you come to know what the country is about, what was the past, and then you are able to connect with that country. So until unless you really go through all the past things, you cannot connect with it. How about books? Do you often read books?
That's something that I don't really enjoy.
Okay.
I'm not a very good reader.
Okay.
So I usually joke around that I have learned a lot at the university, but I think I've learned more on YouTube than at the university. This is a major source for me. And I also listen to quite some podcasts as I'm traveling quite a bit, and I try to make use out of this traveling time, listening to inspiring people and so forth. This is something that I also very much enjoy.
Name few podcasts which you generally listen. Can you recall?
Yeah, there are many different ones, different topics as well.
Okay. So coming back to pharma now, Daniel, you have been traveling a lot. You meet a lot of people in and out. So as of now, what areas in pharmaceutical excites you more? Like, is it precision medicine or cannabinoids or continuous manufacturing or anything else?
Easy to get me excited. When I see a fascinating topic, I'm usually trying to see if there is anything that we can contribute. One thing that I'm very excited about is also 3D printing.
Yeah.
Because this has the potential to shape also the world in pharma, because it transformed already all the other industries or most of the industries. And in pharma, we are a little bit slower. There is this Chinese company that is pushing very hard on the development, and I think it's the leading company, Triastec, which is very inspiring to look at. But I think there are so many small companies trying to push as well in this direction. And I see so much innovation happening as we have the opportunity also to make any geometry with our technology. We get into conversations with projects very early that will do the formulation development with our tech and then transform it over to 3D printing, transfer it over in a tech transfer to 3D printing for manufacturing. And this is very cool because they can make new geometries that are not available by any other manufacturing techniques and getting then some unique solutions out, which is a very cool thing to see.
I have a very stupid question here for you, Daniel.
Yeah.
When you said 3D, so when you said 3D printing in pharmaceutical, it will be like we have a manufacturing setup. So you think a 3D printing will be there to manufacture in scale, or do you think it will be more like a doctor prescribing a medicine with the weight of the body, and then maybe a pharmacist is printing out for that person very personalized medicine? What exactly it is?
I think it would be both.
Oh, okay.
It would be both because there is this approach to have it personalized somewhere in the pharmacies. But the company name that I dropped earlier with Triastec, if you haven't heard about them, I highly recommend checking out their website. They have manufacturing lines that can produce millions of tablets a year on a line. So it's not in competition, what I understand, with the very high volume products, but with specialty products, it is already competitive, what I understand. And when I said it's guiding the way, I'm always impressed when Xiaoling Li is presenting his latest work because it looks like a factory of the future with robots, with a mission control room that could also be placed at SpaceX or NASA to control the 3D printers. So this is something where I think some companies are leading the way already. A lot of people talk about 3D printing, but only a few have also the resources to push forward.
So my next question is again towards your experience, Daniel. So you have been an entrepreneur when you were doing your PhD. So what would you tell a person who is in his academia, probably afraid of stepping out in this entrepreneurship world, but have their aspires to do so? How would you guide this a fellow?
So this is a difficult question to answer because many ideas will fail, but they will only fail if you give up. So if you believe in an idea, then fight for it. I think that is the recommendation that I can give because it's only a failed idea if you give up early. And I had a lot of things. I usually don't like to talk about the negative parts that I experienced, but there are a lot of situations where I said, is it really worth it? Is this something that I want to push for? I remember my mom asked me, hey, Daniel, when is it time to get a real job? And those things in the early steps. But I think once you mastered all of this, the reward is just so wonderful. Not all projects will succeed. So I know that I'm incredibly lucky on this one because it's difficult to make money out of an idea. It is incredibly difficult. We also have things that we have developed which do not contribute to the success. They just cost a lot of development costs in the company and generate basically zero revenue. But it was also fun to develop them and to have those available. But if the company would have been based on only our spectroscopy solution, for example, where we stick some processing sensors in and analyze it on a benchtop scale, the company would not live. We would not have enough money to survive. So it is something where you need to be fortunate, be in the right timing. The timing is everything with startups and new technologies, that people really see the value in it.
And going fast forward 10 years, how do you see MeltPrep in the pharma world? Or what changes you see in the pharma industry with MeltPrep, given MeltPrep in the industry?
Hope that we continue to contribute to make the development faster.
Mm.
In the early days, I remember we had this focus on lab only, early development. Now we see ourselves shifting to, we can supply you also GMP equipment, that we can go into clinical research as well with things that have been done with VCM. So imagine one of our tools is, for example, capable of making intraocular implants, so rod-shaped implants with the 0.3 millimeter diameter. And in the beginning, we had only one coming out in 10 minutes. And then we understood we can build a cavity which holds 50. And then you get 50 out every 10 minutes. And when you start your calculation, you will figure out this is something that makes it very attractive for clinical phase supply, because you need a few hundred, maybe a few thousand. And then we understood we could just build it bigger and get a few hundred out. And this is something that is this journey where our story is just developing. And I think one day in the future, there might be a product where it makes sense to even manufacture it via our technology, or one of our technologies, let's say.
Yeah, I was about to ask you this question, that are you planning that someday that MeltPrep will be seen at the production site as well? So
it's
probably
not
yes.
one of the immediate goals, but we talk from 10 years from now. This is something that eventually may happen, but the product needs to fit. I think it's the same story as in 3D printing, because 3D printing is not something where you will compete with a tablet press where you do millions an hour. It's something where you need this specific feature, this unique geometry, and then things will become interesting because you enable something. And I think this might be the case in our technology as well. Then there might be something that can only be achieved with our approach. And at the moment, we usually recommend do the first steps here, maybe this clinical supply with our VCM, and then move into hot melt extrusion, injection molding, or 3D printing, or this kinetics technology, depending on what people are working on, because every formulation is unique, and not everything will work out in one way or another. One thing that got me recently very excited was a loop back to my PhD topic, because with our 3D molding, remember this PhD topic was on making micro pellets. We actually figured out we can use now our 3D molding also to make micro pellets. And that was pretty cool when we understood that having this unique capability to enable screening for this. I think I would have done a lot of things back in 2011 to have access to such a tool, just for making little amounts of micro pellets. And when we figured that one out, I was really excited. Wow, this would have been so helpful. And it also reminded me of one of the professors that I met in Australia a long time ago, when he told me, when he first saw our equipment, he said, Daniel, I think your invention will save the life of many PhD students.
Wow.
Because sample preparation, formulation development is not something that a professor will do on himself or herself in the lab. That's usually the task that they give to the students. And it's so much easier for them to actually work out now the formulation and make the progress quicker. My heart is always bleeding when I see a PhD student presenting at a conference or in a paper. It took me months or even longer to make a filament that I 3D print than a cylindrical tablet in the end. Because a cylindrical tablet will take in VCM 10 minutes. So the same progress could have been achieved in very short amount of time when you have the right tool available. But I think this is something that we all know. It's always, or at least the people with an engineering mindset understand that the right tool makes the difference.
Yeah. This was very interesting, Daniel. You think we missed out something? Would you like to add something to this episode, or we have covered everything?
That's a good question. Yes, very good question. I think we touched on quite a few things already. I think I don't have anything to add right now.
Yeah, wonderful then. Then good way to end this.
Mm.
Good. So